The MCAS Achievement Results Report is important to all stakeholders who are looking to answer questions about how their school and district scored on the most recent MCAS assessment. Click each of the questions on screen to learn more about this report. This report shows the MCAS achievement levels, CPI score, and student growth scores for students tested in each subject area. The data is initially displayed for the most recent school year for grade level 10 and for all districts in the state, but can easily be displayed for all schools or collaboratives by changing the options at the top of the report. Also note that users can examine different school years, different grade levels, and different subpopulations. Additionally, you can sort the data by any of the columns by clicking the blue column header. The first click will sort the data in ascending order from lowest to highest. A second click on the same header will sort the data in descending order. By clicking the names of any of the districts listed on the report, you will be taken directly to the MCAS percent of students at each achievement level profile for that particular district. Drilling down is a great way to move through the various profiles. Be sure to scroll all the way to the bottom of the report, where you will see overall state totals as well. Click the indicators on screen to learn more about the proficiency levels, CPI, and SGP scores. When you are done, click the Next button to move on. How you use this report will be different if you are an administrator, a teacher, or a member of the community. Click the icon that best matches your role to learn more. As a school or district administrator, this report provides valuable information about the levels of student achievement at each of your schools and in the district as a whole. Before you dive into the report, it's helpful to identify questions that can guide your exploration and analysis of the data. You'll want these questions to reflect your unique needs, but the questions shown here can get you started. For example, you may want to know how your district's growth compares to overall achievement. In some cases, a district's growth, their SGP, may be moderate or high, even though overall achievement, CPI, is relatively low. In other cases, overall achievement might be high, but growth may be low. CPI can help you quickly understand how close your school or district is to helping all students meet proficiency on the standards. The student growth percentile can help you understand how much progress your students are making compared to students in other schools and districts in the state. Identifying the subject areas where students are doing well and not as well at each assessed grade level can help you begin to set the focus for school improvement plans and to address areas of greatest concern. You may also want to know how your district's growth and achievement compare to previous years, the state average, or nearby districts. Comparisons can be made among schools and districts across the state, to the overall state average, or over time within your school or district to identify trends that need to be addressed. Using this data, you can identify the overall success of your students in each subject area and use this information to prioritize the improvement focus among the subjects. You may use this report to examine the variations in achievement or growth between schools, grade levels, subgroups of students, or subject areas as a beginning step in exploring curriculum alignment, or to identify areas of strength and priority areas of need. As an educator or teacher, you can use this report to discover how students overall at your school and in each subgroup performed on the MCAS tests in each subject area over the past several years. Before you dive into the report, It's helpful to identify questions that can guide your exploration and analysis of the data. You'll want these questions to reflect your unique needs, but the questions shown here can get you started. For example, you may want to know which subgroups are struggling or performing well in a particular subject area, grade level, or in your school overall. You may want to begin using this report by using the filters to look at the results for your school, your grade level, and for each student subgroup, to find out how students you taught have performed in both MCAS achievement and growth. This information can be used to compare the results to other schools in your district, or schools across the state, or the state average. This will help inform you about the overall student achievement and growth at your school, and possibly point out areas of strength and areas that need improvement. You may also want to know how your school's growth compares to their overall achievement. CPI can help you quickly understand how close your school or grade level team is to helping all students meet proficiency on the standards. The Student Growth Percentile can help you understand how much progress your students are making compared to students in other schools and districts in Massachusetts. To make these comparisons easier, click on your school's name in the first column to get a quick comparison of your students' performance in comparison to students statewide. As a parent or member of the community, you can use this report to discover how students at your child's school performed on the MCAS tests in each subject area over the past several years. Before you dive into the report, it's helpful to identify questions that can guide your exploration and analysis of the data. You'll want these questions to reflect your unique needs, but the questions shown here can get you started. For example, you may want to know how your child's school's performance and growth compare to previous years, the state average, or nearby schools or districts. You can see the results for each grade level and for each student subgroup, such as gender, income, ethnicity, ELL, and students with and without disabilities. This information can be used to compare your school's results to other schools in your district, schools across the state, or even to the overall state average. You may want to begin using this report by using the filters to look at the results for your school and only your child's current grade level, to find out how students in that grade performed in both MCAS achievement and growth in recent years. Remember, CPI can help you quickly understand how close your school or grade level team is to helping all students meet proficiency on the standards. The Student Growth Percentile can help you understand how much progress your students are making compared to students in other schools and districts in Massachusetts. To make these comparisons easier, click on your school's name in the first column to get a quick comparison of your students' performance in comparison to students statewide. You may also want to learn more about specific subject areas. Visiting the MCAS Test Item Analysis Report would be a great way to dig a little deeper into the state-level reports. The District Analysis and Review Tools, DARTs, are an excellent resource to track data over time and explore comparisons between districts and schools on a number of additional data elements. For educators who have secure access granted by their district, PE 405 and PE 305, the MCAS Achievement Distribution by Year reports in Edwin Analytics will help you analyze how student performance has changed over time. Indicator 1C in the Standards of Effective Teaching Practice outlines the expectations for analyzing data from assessments, drawing conclusions, and sharing them appropriately. Click the link on screen to learn more about the Commonwealth Standards and Indicators of Effective Teaching Practice.